Halloween night, 2018. I was working the late shift at a gas station on the outskirts of a small town in rural Pennsylvania. Around 11:30 p.m., I hadn't seen a customer in almost 2 hours. The place was dead silent, except for the humming of the refrigerators. I was restocking the candy aisle when I heard the bell above the door chime. I turned to greet the customer, but saw nobody enter. A few minutes later, I felt a cold draft and heard footsteps moving around the store. "Hello?" I called out. No response. Footsteps continued between aisles. I checked each aisle, but found no one. When I returned to the counter, the security camera feed was glitching, showing static where the store interior should be. That's when I heard a child's voice from the back of the store. "Trick or treat." I froze. We were miles from any residential area, and it was far too late for trick or treating. The voice came again, closer this time. "Trick or treat." I grabbed my phone to call police, but it had no signal. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, caught a glimpse of a small figure in the candy aisle wearing an old-fashioned Halloween costume with a cracked, pale mask. When the lights stabilized, there was no one there, but on the counter in front of me was a piece of candy corn that definitely wasn't there before. I quit the next day. The manager told me that 30 years ago, on Halloween night, a child was hit by a car and killed right outside the gas station while trick-or-treating. My girlfriend and I decided to spend Halloween night exploring an abandoned mental institution outside of town. Local legends claim that patients who died there still haunted the halls, particularly on Halloween. We parked half a mile away and hiked through the woods to avoid being spotted. The building was massive, with boarded-up windows and crumbling walls. We found an entrance through a broken basement window. The interior was pitch black, so we used flashlights to navigate. The halls were littered with debris, old patient files, and broken furniture. As we ventured deeper, we started hearing strange noises, scratching sounds from inside the walls, distant whispers, and occasional footsteps on the floors above us. We reached what appeared to be an old operating room. Medical equipment was still bolted to the floor, and a rusted examination table stood in the center. My girlfriend suddenly grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I heard what sounded like someone humming a lullaby from a dark corner of the room. I pointed my flashlight there, but saw nothing. We decided to leave. As we turned to go, the heavy metal door slammed shut. We rushed to it, but it wouldn't budge. The humming grew louder, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Our breath became visible in the cold air. My flashlight began to flicker, and in the stropping light, I saw a figure in a dirty white hospital gown standing by the examination table. Its face was gaunt, with sunken eyes and patches of missing hair. In a panic, I slammed my body against the door until it gave way. We ran through the dark hallways before finally finding our way back to the basement window. When we got back to our car, we found a patient wristband on the passenger seat. The car had been locked the entire time. The wristband had a name and date on it, October 31st, 1963. I volunteered at a haunted house attraction every Halloween. Last year, I was playing a deranged butcher in the slaughterhouse room, jumping out at people with a fake cleaver covered in fake blood. Near midnight, a group of teenagers came through. I did my usual routine, jumping out from behind a hanging carcass and screaming. Most teens ran screaming, but one tall guy in a hoodie just stood there, staring at me. When I got closer, I noticed something off about him. His skin was unnaturally pale, and his eyes reflected light like an animal's. When he smiled, his teeth were filed to points. "Nice act," he whispered, "but that's not how it's done." He touched my fake cleaver, and suddenly, It felt heavier. The plastic had turned to metal, and the fake blood on my arms felt warm and wet. I dropped it in shock, and it clanged loudly on the concrete floor. The hooded figure leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Visit me next Halloween. I'll show you what real fear looks like." Then he melted back into the darkness. After that group left, I examined the cleaver, but it was just plastic again. I convinced myself I had imagined everything. A year later, while cleaning my costume for this Halloween season, I found a business card in the pocket that I'd never seen before. It was black with red lettering, showing an address I didn't recognize in just 5 words. "I'm still waiting for you." I burned the card and quit volunteering. Some invitations are better left declined. As a student nurse, I worked night shifts at the hospital. This last Halloween, I was assigned to the geriatric ward, which was unusually quiet that night. Around 3 a.m., an elderly woman in room 237 pressed her call button. When I entered, she was sitting upright in bed, staring at the corner of the room. "Are you all right, Mrs. Mitchell?" I asked. Without looking at me, she pointed to the empty corner. "He's been standing there for hours. Tell him to leave." I played along. "Sir, you need to leave now," I said to the empty corner. Mrs. Mitchell shook her head. "Not him. The other one, behind you." A chill ran down my spine. "There's nobody here but us, Mrs. Mitchell." She finally looked at me, her eyes clear and focused. "You can't see them because they're not here for you. They come every Halloween to collect. They're deciding." "Deciding what?" I asked. "Who goes with them this year?" She pointed to the empty bed across from hers. "They took Mrs. Elkins last night. She was ready. I'm not." Mrs. Elkins had indeed passed away the previous night from heart failure. Mrs. Mitchell grabbed my wrist. "Don't let them see you noticed them. They don't like that." As I turned to leave, she called out, "When you walk back to the nurse's station, don't look into any of the other rooms. Keep your eyes forward. They're making their rounds." Despite myself, I followed her advice. As I passed room 239, I heard whispering that sounded like multiple voices speaking in unison. When I reached the nurse's station, I checked the security monitor. For a split second, I thought I saw dark figures moving from room to room. By morning, 3 patients had passed away, an unusually high number for a single night. All 3 had been in the rooms I passed after leaving Mrs. Mitchell. The following Halloween, I requested a different ward, but was denied. When I arrived for my shift, I discovered I was assigned to room 237. Mrs. Mitchell had passed away a week earlier. As I entered the room, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and heard a familiar voice whisper, "I told you I wasn't ready." My friends and I decided to go camping in the woods last Halloween. We found a secluded spot about 2 hours from the city. While gathering firewood, Mark found something strange. A circle of stones with symbols carved into them. Inside the circle were the remains of a small animal. As night fell, we sat around the campfire telling ghost stories. The woods around us were unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no rustling of nocturnal animals. Around midnight, we heard distant chanting. The voices seemed to be coming from all directions at once, gradually getting closer. Jake suggested we investigate, but I convinced everyone to stay put. The chanting grew louder in a language that barely sounded human. That's when fog rolled in, unnaturally thick and glowing slightly in the moonlight. As it reached our campsite, the fire began to dim, despite Mark constantly adding more wood. Through the fog, we began to see figures moving between the trees, tall, thin shapes that seemed to float rather than walk. Sarah started crying, and whispering voices seemed to come from right beside our ears, despite nobody being there. Jake suddenly stood up, his eyes unfocused. "They're calling me," he said in a flat voice. They need someone to join the dance. Before we could stop him, he walked into the fog. We called after him, but he didn't respond. The rest of us huddled together until dawn. When the sun rose, we searched for Jake for hours, but found no trace of him. When we returned to the circle of stones, the symbols had changed, and in the center was Jake's necklace, a small wooden charm he never took off. The police conducted a search, but found nothing. No body was ever recovered. A year later, I received a photo in the mail with no return address. It showed the same stone circle at night, surrounded by blurry figures in dark robes. In the center stood Jake, his eyes completely black, his face gaunt but smiling. On the back was written, "Join us next Halloween. The dance needs more partners." I live in a small town that takes Halloween seriously. Every year, there's a town-wide costume contest with cash prizes. Last year, everyone was talking about a new participant, a tall figure in an elaborate plague doctor costume walking around town before Halloween. The costume was incredibly detailed, a long black coat, wide-brimmed hat, and a perfect recreation of the beaked leather mask doctors wore during the Black Death. On Halloween night, the plague doctor won first prize, but vanished without claiming the award. The next day, the first person fell ill. It started with fever and chills, followed by swollen lymph nodes and a rash. Within a week, 12 people were hospitalized with similar symptoms. Doctors were baffled. The symptoms resembled bubonic plague, but tested negative. I worked at the local newspaper and investigated the mysterious plague doctor. Security camera footage showed the figure walking past, but in every recording, their face was blurred. People who had spoken with the plague doctor described a voice that was neither male nor female, with an accent they couldn't place. Everyone mentioned the same detail. The eyes visible through the mask's glass lenses didn't blink, not once. 2 weeks after Halloween, the illnesses stopped spreading. Those affected recovered, but reported nightmares of a plague-ravaged medieval town and a doctor in a beaked mask watching them. While researching old town records, I discovered something chilling. In 1720, our town was hit by a mysterious illness that killed dozens. A traveling doctor arrived to help, but was later accused of witchcraft when survivors claimed he had brought the disease rather than cured it. The doctor was executed on November 1st. The records included a drawing of the doctor in his protective gear, identical to the costume seen last Halloween. As this Halloween approaches, people have again reported seeing a tall figure in a plague doctor costume at night. The local historical society received an anonymous donation last week, an authentic 18th century plague doctor mask with a note, "Until the debt is paid." My daughter Emma was 5 last Halloween. 4 weeks she had been talking about her Halloween friend, which I assumed was imaginary. "My Halloween friend says he can only come on Halloween," she told me. "He's been waiting all year to play." She described him as a boy about her age named Thomas, who wore old-fashioned clothes and had very pale skin. On Halloween evening, we went trick-or-treating through our neighborhood. Emma was dressed as a butterfly, and I followed a few steps behind. At one house, an elderly woman looked strangely at Emma before looking up at me. "Your children are adorable," she said, emphasizing the plural. "Oh, I just have my daughter," I corrected her. The woman frowned. "But there are 2 children here. It's a little boy holding your daughter's hand." Throughout the evening, 3 more people commented on Emma's friend. One asked if the boy in the old costume was my son. When we got home, Emma dumped her candy on the floor to sort through it. "Thomas can have the chocolate ones," she said, creating a separate pile. "He says chocolate reminds him of before." "Before what?" I asked. "Before he got sick and had to be buried," she said, matter-of-factly. "He lives under the big tree in the cemetery now, but he can't come out on Halloween." That night, after Emma went to bed, I noticed chocolate wrappers in the trash that I hadn't seen her eat. When I checked her room, she was sleeping peacefully, but at the foot of her bed was a small, wet footprint, too small to be mine and too big to be Emma's. The next morning, I researched our local cemetery and discovered that the oldest section contained graves of victims from a diphtheria outbreak in the late 1800s. Many were children, including a Thomas Lambert, age 6, who died on October 30th, 1891. When I asked Emma if her friend would return next Halloween, she nodded. Thomas says next time he wants to show me where he lives. He says it's nice there, and lots of children like me live there too. We moved to a different city the following month. I work as a dispatcher for emergency services in a rural county. Halloween is always busy, but last Halloween was different. Started with a call at 9:47 p.m. from a landline at an address I didn't recognize. When I answered, there was just static and what sounded like distant screaming. I dispatched an officer to check. 10 minutes later, he radioed in, confused. The address led to an empty lot where a house had burned down 15 years ago. I was logging the call as a prank when another came in from the same number. This time, a woman's voice came through the static. They're coming back. Please help us. 43 Cedar Lane. Cedar Lane had unexisted in our county since a highway was built through that area in the 1970s. Over the next hour, we received 6 more calls from the same number. This time, the woman sounded more desperate, and in the background, I could hear pounding on doors and windows. During the last call, the woman whispered, "They're inside now. Please help my children." Then I heard a scream before the line went dead. My supervisor contacted the phone company. According to their records, the number hadn't been in service for decades. The last registered owner was a family named Sullivan who had all died in a home invasion on Halloween night in 1973. The family had been murdered by people in Halloween masks who were never caught. As midnight approached, calls started coming in from all over the county. People reporting screams and lights coming from the empty lot where the Sullivan house once stood. Officers who responded saw nothing, but their radios picked up fragments of what sounded like a woman begging for help. At exactly midnight, every emergency line in our dispatch center rang simultaneously. When we answered, the same woman's voice came through on all of them. "You didn't help us then. Can't help us now. We'll keep trying every Halloween until someone does." Then all the power in the dispatch center went out for exactly 43 seconds, matching the house number on Cedar Lane. When the systems came back online, the call logs showed no record of any of the calls from the mysterious number. I requested a transfer from the Halloween night shift, but my colleague who worked this past Halloween told me the calls came again exactly the same way. The only difference was the woman's final message. Next year will be the last time we can reach out. To that, we'll have to find another way. If you ever work dispatch on Halloween and get a call from a number that shouldn't exist, remember, sometimes the past calls out for justice and the dead don't easily give up.